So today we are going to talk about intro to knitting, and this is just the basic knit stitch. I am going to first show continental, and then we're going to come back and show throwing. So I have a couple of rows already knitted just to give me a little bit of a solid base, and I just want to show you what you're really doing here. If you look right here, you'll see that a stitch is a loop that goes all the way around the needle, and you have two legs, this leg and this leg. We call this leg the front leg simply because it faces us, and we call this leg the back leg because it faces away. So when we knit, and we're going to talk a little bit about tensioning the yarn, you need to find a way that's going to work for you to hold the yarn to give yourself some tension. I will tell you right now, if you just grab the yarn and put your finger underneath it, it's going to give you enough tension to kind of get used to this. So when we knit, we're going to come into that front loop, right, the front leg, excuse me, and we're going to go between the two legs to the back. We're then going to take the yarn over top of the needle, and we're going to bring it right back through the same two legs. So I'm going to slow that down for you. Go in between, go over top. I use my index finger if need be to help right there, and you're coming right back through that same exact hole. Into the front leg, grab the yarn, come right back through that same hole. Now I'm stretching my yarn out so you can really see what I'm doing. You do not need to do that at home on your own. A knit stitch should just be a really small movement like that. But again, into that front leg, and you're coming from behind into the front leg, between the two, taking your yarn over top of the needle, coming through both of those legs, and then sliding the stitch all the way off. I'm going to do it again. Into the front leg, over the needle, through both legs, push up and push that stitch off. A lot of people forget that very last stage of pushing the stitch off. You're going to get to the point where you can't actually push the stitch off. All you need to do is scoot your stitches forward a little bit on your needle. So continental, your yarn is in your left hand. We go between the legs. You're coming over top of the needle, between those two legs, and off. In, around, and off. And eventually you're going to get good. You don't need to use any assisting. You're just reaching forward and grabbing that yarn. Reaching forward, grabbing the yarn, reaching forward, grabbing the yarn. This is how I learned to knit, so it's my preferred method, but there is nothing right or wrong in either one. I do want to show you that when you start your next row, you're going to see that every single stitch has a little bump, right? It's a little sitting down on its bum. That includes this last stitch, or the first stitch, as the case may be. What you do not want to do is take the yarn over top of the needle, because that then gets rid of the little bottom it's sitting on, and it takes that one stitch and makes it two. If you do that, your scarf or whatever you're making is going to grow on either end. So make sure when you start a new row, you tug a little bit right there, you take your yarn to the back, and you do that by going under the needle, never over top of the needle. So always under the needle. And you're going to be ready right there then to come into that stitch and do it all over again. So knitting is just the same thing over and over and over again. And when you knit every stitch, when you're knitting flat like I am right now, you get a fabric that is called garter stitch that is fully reversible and has a little bumpies on each side. Those bumps are actually purl bumps because they are the back side of a knit stitch. So I just thought I would show you eventually when you get really used to it. This is basically what knitting a row continental will look like. And when we come back to the other side, we're going to do throwing. Okay, the difference between continental and throwing is when you throw, your yarn's going to be in your right hand. So we're going to insert exactly the same way. We're going to grab our yarn in our right hand, and we're going to come under and over that needle. We're going to come between those two legs and push off. Again, inserting. I'm going to hold this needle now, right? With my thumb and index finger, I'm holding the right needle so that my right hand is free to come over, come around, and off. You'll notice that I put my index finger right here to keep tension as I come under. I'm going to come in, hold the needle, come under and over, put my index finger right here to give me a good amount of control as I come between those two stitches. Into the stitch, hold the needle, around, under, up, and off. Into the stitch, hold the needle, come around and over, come between those two legs, again squish my stitches forward and push that stitch off. Into the stitch, around, under, up and off, into the stitch, around the needle, come right under. You'll notice that I'm not dropping my yarn every time. New people often will do this, drop the yarn and try to come under. It's difficult to do, and you're going to notice that your yarn's going to be wiggly wobbly and all over the place. So tension however you want to tension. Hold it and come under, hold it and go around. A lot of different ways to do that. You can, if you go to a yarn shop, if you pop into Hands On Knitting Center, you're going to see that everybody at the table does it a little bit differently. All that matters is that you're able to control with consistent tension that yarn. So I'm going to speed it up for just a second as much as I can in doing this method. I'm going to take you to the end of the row. And it's just, again, same thing over and over again. If you're brand new to this, I suggest you try both methods. There's no right or wrong on it. It's one's going to be easier for you than the other, and whichever one you like best, use. When you get to that very last stitch, I often hear from people, what do I do with the very last stitch? You're doing exactly the same thing. Come in, come around, come under, up, and off. You just want to use a little bit more control. And again, when you turn your work, hold your yarn in the back, tug down a smidgy, tighten up that stitch, and make sure when you start your next row that your yarn is in the back, having been underneath, that you see the little bottom bump of that stitch. We come right in, and we come around, and we start all over again. Hope that helps your knitting a little bit, and enjoy. Thanks.